Project Management Institute, Agile Practice Guide, Section 6, Organizational Considerations for Project Agility. Summarized and read by Uday C. Santakumar. Every project exists in an organizational context. Cultures, structures, and policies can influence both directional and the outcome of any project. These dynamics can challenge project leaders. While project leaders may not have the ability to change organizational dynamics as they see fit, they are expected to navigate those dynamics skillfully. This section explores the way the organization and, in some circumstances, the project context influences projects. Leaders can explore options for change to increase project success. Project agility is more effective and sustained as the organization adjusts to support it. Organizational change management. Organizational change management covers the skill and techniques for influencing change that support agility. The PMI publication, Managing Change in Organizations, a Practice Guide, describes comprehensive and holistic approach for successfully introducing meaningful change. The recommendations offered there include models for describing change dynamics, framework for achieving change, and application for change management practices at the project, program, and portfolio levels. Section 6.1.1 and Section 6.1.2 explore the considerations of change management specific to an agile context. Figure 6-1 on page number 72 shows the relationship between the two topics. The two topics being agile consideration and change management. Agile considerations are described in this practice guide, and change management is described in Managing Change in Organizations, a Practice Guide. There is a small subset that overlaps between the agile consideration and change management. Drivers for change management. All projects are about change. However, there are two key factors that further motivate the use of change management practices in an agile context. Changes associated with accelerated delivery. Agile approaches emphasizes delivering project outputs early and often. However, the receiving organization may not be fully prepared to incorporate these outputs at an increased pace. Accelerating delivery will test the organization's ability to accommodate that delivery. Successfully discovering and delivering a project's feature is not enough. If the organization resists the project's output, then the targeted return on investment is delayed. Customer acceptance of and alignment with the project output becomes even more prevalent in an agile environment. Changes associated with agile approaches. Organizations just beginning to use agile approaches also experience high degree of change. Higher degree of collaboration may require more frequent handoffs between team, departments, or vendors. Decomposing work into iterative prototype involves rework that could be viewed negatively. Leaders should consider change management techniques to address the hurdles of transitioning to the use of agile approaches. Readiness for change. Organizations beginning to use agile approaches should understand the relative compatibility of those methods with their current approaches. Some organizations will have characteristics that more easily support agile principles of cross-department collaboration, continuous learning, and evolving internal processes. Examples of these change-friendly characteristics include executive management's willingness to change, organization's willingness to shift the way it views, reviews, and assesses employees, centralization or decentralization of project, program, and portfolio management functions, focus on short-term budgeting and metrics versus long-term goals, and talent management maturity and capabilities. Conversely, there are other institutional characteristics that may be roadblocks to achieving the changes associated with organizational agility. Examples of these include work is decomposed into departmental silos, creating dependencies that prevent accelerated delivery instead of building cross-functional teams with guidance from center of competencies. Procurement strategies are based on short-term pricing strategy rather than long-term competencies. Leaders are rewarded for local efficiency rather than end-to-end flow of project delivery or optimizing the whole in regard to the organization. Employees are specialized contributors with limited tools or incentives to diversify their skill instead of building T-shaped specialities. Decentralized portfolios pull employees simultaneously onto too many projects at once instead of keeping them focused on one project at a time. The degree to which an organization is willing to review and modify these practices will determine how quickly and effectively agile approaches can be adopted. However, in response to these organizations' impediment to agility, project leaders can try various approaches to accelerate a cultural compatibility for visible and active executive sponsorship, change management practices including communication and coaching, progressively pacing the adoption of agile practices on a project-by-project basis, incremental introduction of agile practices to the team, and leading by example by using agile techniques and practices where possible. Organizational culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Peter Drucker. This statement stresses the importance of people's commitment and passion for a cause. No matter what strategy or plan we implement with your team, its success is going to be governed by the people implementing the plan. If the people who are driving the strategy aren't passionate about the change, or worse, are apathic about their job and their organization, then you stand little chance of implementing the change. An organization's culture is its DNA, its core identity. Culture will always influence the use of agile approaches. Organizational culture runs along a continuum from a high predictive plan to lean startup where everything is an experiment. Although agile approaches fit well with the lean startup culture, a high predictive organization can encourage empirical measurements, small experiments, and learning so they can move towards agility. Creating an environment of safety. Organizational culture is difficult to change, but the most important cultural norm in an organization willing to try any new method or techniques is enabling a safe work environment. Only in a safe, honest, transparent environment can team members and leaders truly reflect on their successes to ensure their project continues to advance or apply lessons learned on failed projects so they do not fall back into the same patterns. Assessing culture. Every project finds itself in tension with competing aspirations. How can the team go fast without compromising quality? How can the team preserve flexibility while also hitting a firm date? Most importantly, how does the team satisfy and meet the requirements of the customer? Project leaders may feel their job is to meet every expectation of every stakeholder, but when compelled to make a choice, there is often a priority depending on the culture and requirement of the organization's business environment. For example, a mobile telecom project has a greater bias for speed, where a government program may have a greater bias for generalization and stability. To navigate these dynamics, project leaders should take the time to assess where emphasis is most often applied in the organization. Figure 6-2 on page number 76 illustrates what an assessment might look like. In this example, a project leader initiates a conversation about organizational priorities with stakeholders, team members, and senior management. Those priorities are then recorded as positions on a sliding scale between two extremes. The results are then used to find agile techniques that best fit with those priorities. For example, exploration on one end versus execution on the other end, speed on one end and stability on the other end, quality on one end and quantity on the other end, flexibility versus predictability, and other factors that can be included in your analysis. Several models exist for assessing such dynamics. However, the model or method used is not that important. It is more critical that the project leader invest the effort to understand the forces that shape their context. Understanding the organization and the industry requirement that an organization needs to satisfy allows for the choosing the right conversation, the right trade-offs, and especially the right techniques. Procurement and contracts. As mentioned earlier in this practice guide, the Agile Manifesto values customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Many project failure stems from breakdown in the customer-supplier relationship. Projects incur more risk when those involved in the contract takes the perspective of winners versus losers. A collaborative approach is one that pursues a shared risk-reward relationship where all sides win. Some contracting techniques that can formalize this dynamic include the following. Multi-tiered structure. Rather than formalizing an entire contracting relationship in a single document, project parties can achieve more flexibility by describing different aspects in different documents. Mostly fixed items. For example, warranties, arbitration can be locked in a master agreement. Meanwhile, all parties list other items subject to change. For example, service rates, product description in a schedule of services. The contract can be referenced from in the master service agreement. Finally, more dynamic items such as scope, schedule, and budget can be formalized in a lightweight statement of work. Isolating the more challenging element of a contract in a single document simplifies modification and thus flexibility. Emphasize value delivered. Many vendors' relationships are governed by fixed milestones or phase gates focused on intermediate artifact rather than a full deliverable of incremental business value. Often these controls limit the use of feedback to improve the product. Instead, milestones and payment terms can be structured based on value-driven deliverable in order to enhance the project's agility. Fixed price increment. Rather than lock an entire project scope and budget into a single agreement, a project can decompose the scope into a fixed price micro deliverables such as user stories. For the customer, this gives more control over how the money is spent. For the supplier, it limits the financial risk of overcommitment to a single feature or deliverable. Not to exceed time and materials. Customers incur unwanted risk from a traditional time and material approach. One alternative is to limit the overall budget to a fixed amount. This allows the customer to incorporate new ideas and innovation into the project not originally planned. When customers want to incorporate new ideas, they will have to manage on a given capacity, replacing original work with new work. Work should be closely monitored as hours worked reach their limit. Also, additional contingency hours could be planned into the maximum budget if considered helpful. Graduated time and material. Another alternative in a shared financial risk approach. In Agile, the quality criteria are parts of what done means. Therefore, the supplier can be rewarded with a higher hourly rate when delivery is earlier than the contracted deadline. Conversely, the supplier would suffer a rate of reduction for late delivery. Early cancellation option. When an Agile supplier delivers sufficient value with only half of the scope completed, the customer should not be bound to pay the remaining half if the customer no longer needs it. Instead, a contract can offer the customer to buy remainder of the project for a cancellation fee. The customer limits budget exposure and the supplier earns positive revenue for services no longer required. Dynamic scope option. For those contracts with a fixed budget, a supplier may offer the customer the option to vary the project scope at specified points in the project. The customer can adjust features to fit the capacity. Then the customer can leverage innovation opportunities while limiting the supplier's risk of overcommitment. Team augmentation. Arguably, the most collaborative contracting approach is to embed the supplier's services directly into the customer's organization. Funding teams instead of specific scope preserves the customer's strategic discretion on what work should actually be done. Favor full-service suppliers. In order to diversify risk, customers may seek a multi-supplier strategy. However, the temptation will be to contract the work such that each supplier does only one thing, which creates a web of dependencies before any usable service or product emerges. Instead, place an emphasis on engagement that deliver full value, as in the idea of completed independent feature sets. It is possible to create Agile projects. Agile is built on a synergy of collaboration and trust. The supplier can help by delivering value early and often. The customer can help by providing timely feedback. Business practices. The willingness and ability to create new competences within an organization when the need arises is a mark of organizational agility. These do not have to be earth-shattering changes and could be less disruptive in an organization that is focused on agility and the results it provides. Transparency and open collaborations are absolutely key. As cross-functional teams deliver value, the teams and the individuals might encounter problems with various support functions in the organization. As team delivers value on a regular basis, finance department may have the opportunity to capitalize the project differently. If the team has contracts with other organizations, procurement departments may need to change those contracts to help other organizations deliver value frequently and synchronize with the team. Once teams start to work in a cohesive and a cooperative manner, they will challenge internal management policies. Human resources may notice individual incentives make less sense, and managers may struggle with performance appraisal of self-organizing employees. In each case, these are opportunities to review the degree to which existing practices support agile way of working. As organizations progress to greater agility, there will be obvious needs for additional business units to change the way they interact and perform their responsibilities. The changes that have benefited other areas of the organization should now be embraced so the effectiveness of the entire organization can be realized. Multi-team coordination and dependencies. In other words, scaling. Many projects incur dependencies even when they are not managed within a given program. For this reason, it is necessary to have an understanding of how Agile works within an existing program and portfolio management context. Frameworks. The guidance of the most widespread Agile methods such as Scrum and Extreme Programming focuses on the activity of single, small, usually co-located cross-functional team. While this is very useful for efforts that require single team, it may provide insufficient guidance for initiatives that require the collaboration of multiple Agile teams in a program or portfolio. A range of frameworks such as Scaled Agile Framework, Large-Scale Scrum, and Disciplined Agile and approaches example Scrum of Scrums have emerged to cater to such circumstances. More details on this can be found in Annex A3, which will be discussed in another video. Considerations. There is more than one way to scale work. The team might need to scale the work of several Agile projects into a single Agile program. Alternatively, the organization can design a structure that supports Agile approaches across the entire portfolio. For example, it is helpful to start small and learn as rapidly as possible what works well in an organizational context. Teams can achieve successful outcomes even when everything is not completely transformed into an Agile approach. Regardless of the approach, a critical success factor is the healthy Agile team. If using an Agile approach for a single team is not successful, do not try to scale up to using it more broadly. Instead, address the organizational impediments that prevent the team from working in an Agile way. The goal of large-scale Agile project is to coordinate the efforts of different teams to bring value to customers. There is more than one way to do that. Team may use a formal framework to apply Agile thinking to adjust existing programs and management practices. Agile and the Project Management Office. The PMO exists to shepherd business value throughout the organization. It might do this by helping projects achieve their goals. Sometimes the PMO educates teams or arranges for training and support the projects. Sometimes the PMO advises management about the relative business value for a given project or set of projects. Because Agile creates cultural change, over time the organization might need to change, including the PMO. For example, managers make decisions about which project to fund and when, and team decides what they need for training or advice. An Agile PMO is value driven. Any project should deliver the right value to the right audience at the right time. The PMO's objective is to facilitate and enable this goal. An Agile-based PMO approach is based on a customer collaboration mindset and is present in all PMO programs. In many cases, this means the PMO operates as if it were a consulting business, tailoring its efforts to meet specific needs requested by a given project. Some projects may need tools and templates, while others may benefit from executive coaching. The PMO should strive to deliver what is needed and keep the pulse on its customer to ensure that it knows and is able to adapt to their needs. This intrapreneur approach focuses on the PMO activities that are perceived as the most valuable to the project it supports. An Agile PMO is invitation oriented. In order to accelerate progress on a value-based charter, a PMO may be tempted to mandate certain solutions or approaches. For example, to make everyone do it the same way to get some quick wins. However, a more deliberate perspective incorporates the desire for employee engagement. This is achieved by inviting only those interested to engage with the PMO services. Higher engagement with PMO practices makes it easier for those practices to be sticky. If PMO is delivering value to its clients, it is more likely that clients will request its services and adopt its practices. An Agile PMO is multidisciplinary. In order to support project-specific needs, the PMO needs to be conversant in several competencies beyond project management itself. Because different projects require distinct capabilities, for instance, one project may need organizational design to address staffing challenges, while another may require organizational change management techniques for stakeholder engagement or unique business model to support customer goals. Some organizations have been transforming their PMOs into Agile Center of Excellence that provides such services as developing and implementing standards, provide templates for user stories, test cases, cumulative flow diagrams, etc., provide Agile tools, and educate customers and educate supporting groups on iterative development concepts. Developing personnel through training and mentoring. Coordinate Agile training courses, coaches, and mentor to help people transition to an Agile mindset and upgrade their skills. Encourage and support people to attend local Agile events. Multi-project management. Coordinate between Agile team by communicating between projects. Consider sharing items such as progress, issues, retrospective findings, and improvement experiments. Help manage major customer releases at the program level and investment teams at the portfolio level using an appropriate framework. Facilitating organizational learning. Gather project velocity profiles and capture, store, and index retrospective findings. Managing stakeholders. Provide product owner training, guidance on accepted training, and how to evaluate and give feedback on systems. Champion the importance of subject matter experts to projects. Recruiting, selecting, and evaluating team leaders. Develop guidelines for interviewing Agile practitioners. Executing specialized tasks for projects. Train and provide retrospective facilitators. Create agreements with Agile project troubleshooters, and provide mentors and coaches. Organizational structure. The structure of an organization strongly influences its ability to pivot to new information or shifting market needs. Here is a list of key characteristics. Geography. Geographically distributed and dispersed project organizations may find several challenges impeding in their work on any project. Project leaders and regional managers may have alternatives or even competing goals. Additionally, cultural differences, language barriers, and lower visibility can slow down productivity. Fortunately, the use of Agile approaches can encourage more collaboration and confidence that would otherwise exist. Project leaders in this context should encourage dialogues at the team and executive level to tailor techniques for the context and to manage expectation about the effort required to do so. Functionalized structures. Some organizations are structured on a spectrum ranging from highly projectized to matrixed to highly functionalized. Projects with highly functionalized structures may find general resistance to collaboration across its organization. Size of project deliverable. Reducing the size of a project deliverable will motivate more frequent handoffs across departments and thus more frequent interactions and a faster flow of value across the organization. Allocation of people to projects. Another approach is to ask for a single person from each department to be temporarily yet fully allocated to the highest priority project. Procurement heavy organizations. Some organizations choose to implement projects primarily through vendors. Although project goals may be clear, vendors have a responsibility to look after their own financial viability. Moreover, once vendors complete their obligation and leave the engagement, the associated project knowledge goes with them. This limits the internal competencies needed for sustained flexibility and speed. Agile techniques such as retrospective and follow-up on possible improvement areas when the vendor is still engaged can help mitigate the loss of product knowledge. Evolving the organization. When addressing an individual challenge area or implementing a new hybrid or agile approach, it is recommended to undertake the work incrementally. A common practice is to treat the change process as an agile project with its own backlog of change that could be introduced and prioritized by the team based on perceived value or other considerations. Each of the change can be treated as an experiment, which is tested for a short period of time to determine suitability as is or the need for further refinement and consideration. Use Kanban board to track progress, showing the new approaches already in use as done, those being tried as in progress, and those still waiting to be introduced as to do. See figure 6-3 on page number 85 for those initial board with ranking backlog. In figure 6-4 on page number 86 shows an example of what a board might have as work progresses. Using these tools to organize and manage the change implementation provides visibility into progress and also models the approaches being implemented. Rolling out changes in a transparent and appealing way improves the likelihood of their success. And thus concluding Section 6, Organizational Consideration for Project Agility by Project Management Institute, Agile Practice Guide.